So this is chapter one in political science, 1101, Power and Citizen in American Politics. And we're going to start with the basics of what is politics. And politics is the struggle over who gets power and resources in society. The way that I was taught this definition was who gets what and how. Um, Harold Laswell. So the Greek philosopher Aristotle said we are political animals, and as political animals we seem destined to remain. The political scientist Harold Laswell, who gets what, when, and how. Essentially, politics is the manipulation of the world around you to make sure that you get what you want, and to make sure that others get what they want, and not necessarily sacrificing what you want to give the others what they want. Does that make sense? It's essentially a give and take inside of society to allow everybody to get as much power as they can. And power, of course, is the ability to get other people to do what you want them to do. The more power you have, the more ability you have to control the world around you, the more ability you have to control the political atmosphere around you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Politics is also the process through which we try to arrange our collective lives in some kind of social order so that we can live without crashing into each other. The ultimate goal of politics is to do whatever you want to do and not necessarily impede on the rights of other people to do it. That's a very libertarian way of putting it, but that's essentially what it is. What would a world without politics be like? And that's an interesting thought. If we eliminated all self-interest and lived without a political atmosphere, life would be constant conflict. What the philosopher Thomas Hobbes called a war of all against all. Politics saves us from that fate. Politics, while also has its self-interest, of course, it also serves as a way to allow groups of people who have like-minded uh, goals to come together and make their goals happen. So that's another part of the politics and the political system that's being highlighted right here. Now, what is government? So government is a system of organization exercising authority over a body of people. American government is the Constitution and the institutions set up by the Constitution for the exercise of that authority. Authority is power that citizens use legitimate or right, power to which we have implicitly consented. Governments exercise authority because people recognize them as legitimate. Essentially saying, the government cannot act unless people find it to be legitimate. And in 90% of the cases in this country, we do find our government to be legitimate. We do find the Constitution as our governing document to be legitimate. And the institutions that the Constitution sets up to have actual power over our lives. We sacrifice a little bit of ourselves for the betterment of society as a whole. The rules and institutions of government have a profound effect on how power is distributed and who wins and loses in the political arena. Rules are directives that determine how resources are allocated and how collective action takes place. They determine how we try to get the things that we want. Rules essentially lay down the foundation for everything else in politics. If you can operate inside of the rules and still maintain your power while operating inside of the rules, you are a very powerful person. Then the institutions are the organizations where governmental power is exercised. So in the United States, rules provide to the institutions or representatives of the people, or direct representation that we understand as we send forth those people to represent us in the federal body of the chambers of the power at the state level and the federal level and also the local level. Those elected individuals represent us at those individual levels, hopefully, in a perfect world anyway, fighting for our interests at each level. And then we also have a federal political system, which is the separation of a upper level or federal government, and then a lower level state governments. Now, our economic system, capitalism, in a pure capitalist economy, all the means that are used to produce material resources, industry, businesses, and land, are privately owned, and decisions about production and distribution are left to individuals operating through the free market process. Capitalist economics rely on the market, the process of supply and demand. Laissez-faire capitalism is a French term that loosely translated means let people do as they wish. No economic system today maintains a purely unregulated form of capitalism. This is where I kind of differ from the definition of politics from before. If we allowed self-interest to govern everything, then this pure capitalist function would serve to only deal with those that could control the resources inside of that capitalist system. And government, on the other hand, serves to protect the needs of the many serves to protect the needs of the many, and without it, there's no regulating hand that government actually will be able to use to ensure that everyone is equally represented. I hope that makes sense. I tried to bring it back a little bit, but yeah, continuing on. Another form of government, and the boogie word for all conservatives, by the way, is socialism. In a socialist economy, economic decisions are made not by the individuals themselves through the market, but rather by politicians, based on their judgment of what society needs. The public and private spheres overlap with each other, and politics controls the distributions of resources. Many theories hold that socialism is possible only after a revolution that thoroughly overthrows the old system to make way for new values and institutions. You're going to hear a couple things in that definition, like the public and private spheres overlapping, and politicians and politics controls the distribution of all resources. One of the things that, when I hear that definition, I think about is the way that we are right now. We do have socialist tendencies inside of our capitalist system. They're not overt necessarily, but they're not there either. And a big problem between the liberal side and the conservative side is that, you know, where does the government need to step in versus when is it better to let the markets take over, and when is it okay for, again, self-interest to define the political process in the United States? This is the constant tug of war that we find ourselves in. Now, social democracies, some countries in Western Europe, especially the Scandinavian nations of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, have developed hybrid economic systems. They attempt to strike a difficult balance between providing substantive guarantees of fair outcomes and procedural guarantees of fair rules, or what the Biden administration will call equity. Political systems and the concept of citizenship. Authoritarian governments generally have total power over their subjects. Non-authoritarian permits citizens to limit the state's power by claiming rights that the government must protect, which is what the Bill of Rights does. In a non-authoritarian government, at least in the United States. In an authoritarian system, governments give ultimate power to the state rather than to the people. This can take various forms: dictatorships, direct monarchies, theocracies, where you have a religious underscoring in your political system, fascism being things like the Nazi movement and Mussolini in World War II, and then oligarchies, like where the elites control the governmental systems, much like China right now, where one party rules, and that's considered to be the elite party. And there is an opposition party; it exists, but it has very, very little power inside of the actual government system itself. When a system combines an authoritarian government with a socialist economy, the system is totalitarian. Totalitarian because the authoritarian government gives the citizens no rights to make decisions of their own free will. And then also the political system controls the markets as well and tells the citizens what they need and when they need it. That's a total control, the total government control of all social and business related attributes. The authoritarian state may deny individual rights in those spheres where it chooses to act, but it may leave large areas of society, such as capitalist economy, free from governmental interference. This is called authoritarian capitalism. So, and this is almost, you could almost make a comparison to what's trying to happen right now in the United States, where we're trying to socially decide, we're trying to really, the culture war and the wokeism and all these other issues, all that can be boiled down to we're trying to understand the best way for us to exist with those viewpoints that we may not agree with, like transgenderism or the more theocratic side of the abortion argument. The right to own a gun sometimes can be put in this way. This is almost, you can almost make a comparison to that, but we're not quite there yet, I don't think. And then there's democracy and non-authoritarian systems. In democracy, government is the people. Democracies, nevertheless, try to maximize freedom for the individuals who live under them. So while government is the people, democracies should still try to maximize freedom at the individual level as much as possible. Meaning, you should still be able to do pretty much whatever you want to, again, as long as you're not running into the person beside you and trampling upon their rights. Democracies are based on the principle of popular sovereignty. There is no power higher than the people, and in the United States, the document establishing their authority is the Constitution. When we talk about popular sovereignty, no single person, no politician, no business owner, no one is above the law. No one is above being tried in the court of opinion, or not the court of public opinion, excuse me. No one is above being indicted in a courtroom by a jury of their peers. Nobody's above the rule of law. That's what we try to achieve in the United States. Now, in an elite democracy, decisions are made not by elected officials, but by the elite in business, the military, the media, and education. Elitism is certainly something that you could certainly say, like Elon Musk right now, is certainly making decisions both in the business sector and in the media sector as well by buying Twitter. You could say that he's overlapping those two things. And on pluralist democracy, what is important is not so much individual participation, but membership in groups that will participate in government decision making on the members' behalf. Pluralist democracy is sort of what we have right now, which is our membership is the Republican, the Democratic Party, and we participate in the party system, and the group itself makes a platform of issues, a platform of decision makers, and then they go to Congress and make decisions that are based upon those platform priorities on the members' behalf. In participatory democracy, individuals have the right to control all the circumstances of their lives, and direct democratic participation should take place not only in government, but in industry, education, and community affairs as well. We do have participatory democracy as well. We do have a say in a lot of those things, including education, including community affairs, and also in industry. We can choose to partake in or not partake in some industries through boycotts. We can do private education or public education like you're doing right now. You could be engaged in the community, or you could withdraw from the community if you want to. There's plenty of TV shows, which I find hilarious, that they're off the grid, but they're on TV. That's always funny to me. Now, the role of the people. Citizens or members of a political community have rights as well as obligations. In the words of Thomas Hobbes, life without government is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Now, Hobbes also said, and John Locke said as well, people have freedom and rights before government exists. When they decide they are better off with government than without it, they enter into a social contract, giving up some of those rights in exchange for the protection of the rest of their rights by a government established by the majority. This social contract, which is John Locke, by the way, is the way that government gains its legitimacy, is the way that our society functions right now. The social contract is everything. And it holds that we have rights before government starts, and that right is to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all those things. Um, and so we get the republic versus democracy. You'll hear a lot of times that we're a democratic republic. Well, we're really not. We're a democracy first. We're not really the republic that they want us to be. Uh, who is a citizen, who is not? You got jus soli, the right of the soil. Any person that is born on the actual territorial, either water or soil of the United States, including military bases or anywhere in the world that the United States flag flies, you have the right of the soil and are an American citizen. Jus sanguinis, the right of blood, through a family connection. If you have an aunt or an uncle who is a American citizen, you have a right to that citizen as well. And then naturalization, or the process with which legal immigrants obtain their citizenship. This process can ebb and flow depending on the political atmosphere of the time. History has shown us that we go through periods of acceptance and then denial of immigrants, and it just really depends on the era of history that you live in on how you feel about immigration itself. American political culture, ideas that unite us. Political culture refers to the general political orientation or disposition of a nation. This belief in the primary of the individual citizen is called individualism. So there are core American values that we have, like democracy, freedom, and equality. The political culture of the United States right now generally seems to be this idea that we are free to do what we want to do, except for those things that we find to be unnatural or uncomfortable. Um, and of course, I'm talking about like transgender issues, gay rights. We're having an argument within ourselves right now about where that line is for what we consider to be normal inside society. The political left seems to believe that equality in all things, that all people are people and therefore should be treated as such. And then the political right seems to think that the more theocratic view of our God finds this unnatural, our Bible finds this unnatural, and therefore it's unnatural for us as citizens as well. Um, that's something to think about. And then ideologies that divide us. The sets of beliefs and opinions about politics, the economy, and society help people make sense of the world, and they can divide them into opposing camps are called ideologies. So you got conservatives versus liberals, and libertarians versus progressives and populists. Conservatives and liberals. Conservatives, of course, are more traditionally speaking. Like you look into the 1930s and 40s and 50s, going even far back as 1860s. Those are the more traditionalistic. The white man is king, and I'm not saying that they're racist necessarily, but that's kind of how the party breaks down a little bit. Liberals have taken the mantle of bring everybody in, white, black, Asian, all the above, bring them all in, gays, um, transgenders, non-binary, whatever you got, bring it on. We want everybody. And then you got libertarians, which is almost essentially, that government has no power over anything at all. And I don't really jive with libertarians, and it's probably pretty obvious not talking about them. I don't like libertarianism. I don't like the way that they handle themselves, and I don't like the way that they. I don't like libertarians. Put it that way. And then there's progressives versus populists. Progressives generally are more open to world affairs and being more active in world affairs, whereas populists are more local bound, especially more nation bound in the United States. Populists are not likely to favor things like the war in Ukraine. They're not likely to favor a foreign budget at all. Actually, it all depends on the particular issue that they're going through. So that is the end of the chapter 1 lecture. If you have any questions, email me.